Alright, so if you've seen the title of this video, you likely already know what it's about. Like, I didn't really mince words on that particular end of things, and if you happen to be dealing with any kind of severe anxiety or stress or depression in your life right now, and you don't want to see something like this or hear anything like this, I completely understand. This is likely not the video for you. But by that same extension, this isn't going to be one of those kinds of videos where I'm going to be like mopey or anything like that. I very much intend to make this as positive of an experience as possible for what it's worth. So just kind of bear that in mind going forward, because I know a lot of people have a great deal of issue even talking about the loss of loved ones and things like that. So if this just isn't your thing or not the video for you, I completely understand. You feel free to move on. That being said, I've been mulling this over for a while in my head as to how exactly to approach this video, and I'm still not quite sure. And I don't really want to dwell on any particular subject for too long, so I'm going to try and keep this as condensed and digestible as possible, but we'll see how things go. I actually thought this was in the ground, but no, it's movable. So yeah, this is where the closest person I've ever had to a brother now rests. Yeah, he was an honest-to-God sweetheart. We were, man, I was 14 when I met Steven, and this was 2004, and he was 16 or 17 at the time, and we kind of met organically through my friends who I knew and grew up with, and it was just one of those things where he was a drummer and my friend Matt was a vocalist and he needed a drummer, and they kind of met organically because I'm not actually sure how they met specifically, but they met because Steven worked at local Big Lots, and they got together, found out that they were both musicians, and Matt was in need of a drummer. So they ended up organizing a meetup at Matt's mother's house, oddly enough, I believe, and they decided to just have a jam session there and invited all of us to come over. And I, of course, since at the time I couldn't drive, I had to get one of my friends to pick me up, and they dropped me off there, and we went in, and that was when I met him for the first time. And back then I was only listening to stuff like, you know, Slipknot, Marilyn Manson, Rob Zombie, things like that. And the truck that pulled up behind us was literally Steven's mother. And that was a wild coincidence, and it was really nice to talk to her for a few minutes and catch up with her. I haven't seen her in ages, in well over a decade, you know, and that's her going. But anyways, let's get back on track. She's an absolute sweetheart. I just didn't want to impose on her and ask her to be filmed or anything like that. So, but long story short, the way I met Steven was through my friend Matt, He's a vocalist. Steven's a drummer. They organized a jam session together, and basically I got dropped off there, met Steven. At the time, it was like 2004, and I was in my early teens, so like I said, I was like 14, so the only stuff I'd really listening to at that point was like Korn, Slipknot, Marilyn Manson, Mudvayne, you know, Static X, stuff like that. Steven comes along, we see each other. I was wearing like a Slipknot shirt at the time. Steven was sitting behind his drum set wearing that exact Cradle of Filth shirt, I shit you not. And he, from behind his drum set, just like points at me with his drumstick and just kind of nods to my Slipknot shirt. And so from that point forward, we were basically connected at the hip. Like it was like meeting like the twin that I've never had, because I'm an only child, and like we all like even all of my friends always said that we looked similar, because at the time my hair wasn't grown out, but I had just started to grow out my hair, so it was like in that weird awkward middle phase. But Steven's hair was already super long like mine is now. It was like that. And like from that point forward, he introduced me to like all of the really heavy metal bands like Cradle of Filth, Nile, Behemoth, like Septic Flesh, Cephalic Carnage, like it's like anything that was death metal or anything remotely related to it under the sun. He knew about it and he wanted to introduce me to it because we just really connected. And like I basically moved in with him like that same night, and he lived in his parents' basement, and it was summer break, and I was like the next year I was going into like my first year of high school, so I didn't have anything better to do, and I wanted someone to hang out with that I thought was really cool, so I just fucking moved in with him. And we just basically became brothers, like, for lack of a better word. And that's pretty much the gist of the origin story to that. And you know, the thing is that he taught me a lot of really valuable things. And one of the things that I was actually talking to his mother about a few minutes ago that does sadden me is that I can now say with a pretty high level of certainty that I'm probably one of the last people out of our entire friend group of like 20 to 30 some odd people-ish that we grew up with as a group that now still frequently visit his grave. Because I was telling her that I don't think many of us realized it until he passed away in 2007, but he seemed to be the glue that was holding all of us together, you know? And I even told her, you know, like we as a group of friends all kind of still existed as a group, like an amorphous group of friends that all kind of hung out with each other on and off before he came into the picture, you know, back in 2004. But once he was in the picture in our friend group, it was like we all just kind of came together, like solidified as like a ride or die group of friends that just could not be separated by anything. And I don't think really anybody noticed until he passed away. And once he did, it became very obvious, at least to me. Because after he was gone, most of us stopped hanging out with each other. Most of us went our separate ways, you know, started like going off, getting married, having kids, moved to other states. And I even mentioned this to her. In a few cases, unfortunately, some of it has to do with the fact, in the case of, you know, people no longer visiting here, other friends of mine also passing away, because a lot of that's happened over the years, sadly. But regardless, it's one of those things to where when he passed away, it really destroyed all of us in one form or another. We all handled it very differently, of course, as is the case with pretty much everyone. Everyone handles loss and mourns differently. That's just ubiquitous across everyone throughout the world. Everyone handles things like that differently. But, you know, to me, I handled it very poorly. I will openly admit that with my whole chest. Because, as I was telling her when she was here a few minutes ago, for many years after Stephen passed away, I couldn't come here without breaking down. And, you know, I blamed myself for a lot of things that realistically I shouldn't have. There wasn't a reason for me to blame myself for, but that was how I was dealing with the loss. And I blamed myself because I told his mother, that whenever I would come here, when I was still very much shattered by losing him, that I would come here and pretty much holler at him, you know, because I would come here by myself and talk to him. And, you know, be it out of anger or sadness or immaturity or a mixture of all of the above, I would just kind of holler at him and tell him, why you? You know? Why is it you? You know? Because out of everyone, like, and I had to clarify, and I need to clarify now, no one deserves to have this happen, you know? You don't, this is not the kind of thing that I would ever wish upon anybody. Like, no one deserves to die for any reason whatsoever, be it accidental or intentional or whatever. But what bugged me and upset me so much, especially at the time, was that most of us viewed Stephen as a saint. He had never done anything wrong to anybody, you know? And so that's why I would always come here and angrily, with tears running down my face, be like, you know, why you? Why not somebody else? And because I even told her that I felt like it should have been me instead. Because I took his death so badly that it sent me off into a spiral of depression that I handled very poorly and made me make horrible decisions that, looking back, I should never have done. But that's the bed that I have to lie in. You know, those were my choices. And should I have made them? No, of course not. But hindsight's always 20/20, you know? And it is what it is. But he taught me a lot of good things. And this is my core point. If you have to take away anything from this, it's that you should never... It's not just a message of, like, you know, never forget those you've lost or anything like that. It's remember the best about them. Because Stephen, I know, would have wanted that. And because that was the kind of person he was, you know. He was more focused on having fun and striving towards his goals and being there for people than anything else. And he excelled at all of those things. And even though he was, while he was alive, he was by a pretty wide margin the most talented drummer in the entire state. And he knew it. He absolutely knew it. He never boasted or bragged about it. He knew what he was capable of, but at no point would he ever gloat about it or, you know, throw it up in anybody's face or anything like that. He was always very well reserved, very well kept, and especially for me at the age that I was, I admired that. And it taught me a lot of patience in things, because he worked very hard to get to where he was on drums in a relatively short amount of time, but still, he worked his ass off for it. And that's the thing, is that, you know, if you want to get anywhere, be it fast or slowly, you're going to have to put in a lot of work for it, you know? And he was patient. And these were all things that I admired heavily in him and tried to emulate. And I still do to this day. And I made a promise to him a long time ago to where, you know, no matter what, I would never give up. And, you know, regardless of what it is, be it in music or this, or just trying to help people out, or anything, period, that I would just never give up, because I feel like I owe him that, you know? And I not only would never, I would never hear the end of it from him if I did give up, but I would never forgive myself, if that makes sense, you know? So, realistically, my point is, when you do something like this, and I do highly recommend it, to go and visit those that you've lost, and those that you cared about that have passed away, who are no longer with you. And this is obviously easier said than done, especially depending on who you are, but focus on everything good that you remember about them, and try to remember them in as fond of a way as you possibly can, because your memories of that person are all that's left, and all that you can do is carry on their legacy, their memories, and be the best that you can possibly be for that person. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and I do feel like I needed to just kind of get off my chest, because I do come here at least once a year and just kind of sit and talk to Steven. And, you know, wherever he is now, whatever you believe, you know, I feel like he would appreciate it. Maybe he would call me stupid and just laugh at me. I don't know. He was certainly the kind of person to do something like that, to see me sitting here and just point and laugh at me and being like, what the fuck are you doing, you idiot? Get off your ass and go do something, you know? It's like, he was very much that kind of person, and that's another thing that I always appreciated about him. But that really just reinforces my point further, is that I miss him, but not in any kind of sorrowful or sad way. You know, I did at one point, You know, it was at one point a very sad thing that I had a very difficult time coping with and dealing with, but now I just have only the desire to remember the good times, the best parts of from when he was around. You know? So I hope that if this helped you in any way, then I'm glad. I really am. Um, you know, I don't know. This is one of those awkward times when I legitimately have no idea how to end a video like this. But all I can say is I hope that this helped someone out there in some way. Because while that may not have necessarily been the end goal of the video, I hope that it did, at least, in some form or fashion. And if it did, I'm glad. You know, because I do feel like there's way too many of us, especially nowadays, who, when someone passes away, we don't deal with it. Not only in a bad way, but a lot of people just don't deal with it at all, and they just push it to the back of their mind until years and years down the road, and then they wish that they had not only emotionally dealt with it then, but had, you know, come to, like, say, a place like this to like visit, be their friends or family members or whatever. So, you know, it is what it is. Like I said, people deal with things in different ways, and all I can say is that I'm glad that now, looking back, I'm able to come here and just, you know, reflect on all the good stuff. Because there was a lot. There was a lot of good stuff. And most of it was good. So. And that's really about it, you know? I know this was a weird one, but hey,